So
Thank
really thrilled to have this panel. So, in my work with parents, we primarily work with organizations to support their working parents. And this is such a hot topic of just, understanding what the future looks like around education and, what we can see if we all had a crystal ball around the future of care as well. And so I'd love to just start by having you each kind of share a little bit briefly about how COVID has impacted your family, how you're juggling work and care responsibilities and online learning, if you have that on your plate as well. So I'd love for you to kind of we'll round robin this one. Priya, why don't we kick it off with you?
Sure. Thanks again, Mary Beth. I'm really excited to be on the call. Thank you, Blessing. Thank you to Mother. Honestly, this is an amazing panel to be online with. But to answer your question, yeah, I think everybody probably is in the same boat as me. It completely turned everything upside down. Personally, I have a 9 and a 6-year-old. We homeschool every day. I block the mornings to homeschool, and I'm trying frantically to answer emails. My husband works in sports, so his job is definitely something that we're keeping an eye on as well. But professionally as well, COVID has completely turned things around for us, upside down, sorry. Flexible, since 2016, we've been partnering with organizations to provide on-demand pop-up childcare on site. So that's at events, conferences, and at the workplace for all of the days, ironically, when school is closed and work is not, which was not this frequent before. But as you can imagine, post-COVID, we had to halt all those operations and think creatively on how can we continue to deliver on our mission of trying to help just bring work and life together by creating innovative childcare solutions. And so that's what we've had to do, is kind of step back and think, how do we continue to support working parents where they are, which is at home. I'm in my younger son's room. We kind of moved him in with my older son and turned this into an office because we had to. But I think just like everybody else, we're trying to be creative. We're trying to be resilient, and we're also just trying to be generous and gracious to ourselves, because this is hard. No one's really been through this before, at least not in our lifetime. Even my mom was saying, "I'm amazed that you guys have to deal with this." So that's how we've been faring.
I love that. And I think it's such a critical thing to call out around resiliency. And, one thing that I always share in our workshops is your parents, right? You're already resilient. You're already flexible and adaptable. So we know how to deal with the hard. We need to continue to acknowledge that it's hard, but we will kind of continue to rise up. So thank you for sharing that, Priya. Judy, over to you. I know you have slightly older children, so I'd love to hear your perspective too.
Yeah, my kids are older, and I'm experiencing it now through my daughter, who's going to give birth with her first child on September 2nd. So I'm, experiencing this pandemic through the concerns of a pregnant, young mom, and what that means for delivery in New York City, and let alone what it means bringing a child into this world. So, it's sort of an indirect experience, but I'm there. But, every day in my day job, I talk to teachers and families in like every state in the country, because that's what Scholastic does. And so, we're talking to teachers literally every night in focus groups, and to parents. And so we're hearing what's going on. Schools are closed. There's no schools open virtually in the country. So this responsibility, as you're describing, is transferred, to parents to some extent, and families. It's like, help, nobody knows what they're doing. So we're working around it. I think, I hope my contribution to this panel will be to kind of show the potential role of books and reading and creating a culture in your home, to whatever level, about how important reading and books can be. And I will say that teachers are telling me, like, spread the message to parents to relax a little bit. Like, you don't have to feel the pressure. Nobody's kids are going to be on track. Nobody's kids are going to be, at grade level at the end of this. And so just give yourselves a little bit of a break. It's very difficult, but try not to have a stressful negative experience, and understand that we're all in this in the same way.
That is a message that we all need to hear, maybe post on our computers, on our walls, everywhere, that we need to just take a breath, relax, and that it is going to be okay. We're kind of all in this together, as we always say. And I know hearing that from you is especially comforting. I have a daughter going into kindergarten, And, my biggest fear is, how does she enter kindergarten in such a crazy world when she didn't even get to finish pre-K? So definitely interesting. Lisa, over to you.
Yeah, so for me, I have 4 kids and 2 businesses. And so life was crazy before, and now it's just a whole nother level. But, it's interesting because one of my businesses is a school. And so I've got to see this from a unique perspective. I get to see it from an educator and principal as well as a parent. So I'm homeschooling 4 kids. I've got teenagers to 3 years old. I'm running my 2 businesses, and it's been a definite learning experience, a juggle for sure. But I get it. Like, I get what Judy was just saying. We as teachers want parents to know to be flexible, but I also get, as a parent, being like overwhelmed and crazed by the amount of things we have to submit. So, for my school, I was able to, within 5 days, turn it into an online school. And for my other business, I own Top Score Writing. I immediately went into like mom mode and thought, within like 2 days, I've got to do something for teachers and parents. So I've been putting out free writing lessons for the past 10 weeks for teachers and parents to use, and at least give some sort of ease on both sides of the spectrum. So it's definitely been a learning experience for everyone, but I think that we'll all come out of this stronger for sure.
Definitely. Pulling on that resilience and strength, I think, is so huge. And I love that you're also sharing about how your role as a mother kind of influences, your businesses, and especially in education. That makes so much sense. So want to start with Judy, especially as you're working so closely with teachers. What do you see as kind of the future of education through the summer and the fall? If you had a crystal ball, what do you think is kind of going to be what we'll be walking into?
I don't have a crystal ball. I do know that like I said, we're talking to teachers all day long and nobody knows. So there is no clear plan anywhere. Every county, every state, every district is looking at it differently. We're hearing all kinds of options, from virtual learning to home learning to different days, different periods within a day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Nobody knows. There is nothing for sure right now, really. So you have to just relax and wait and see. And I think the message I want to make sure everybody hears is to communicate. Look on your school's website, talk to your local community, talk to your teachers, reach out to the teachers. Just keep those lines of communication open. And then what you can do, as family members, is you're not teachers. We're not supposed to be teachers, but we can support with books and reading. Like, books are great, they're great tools, and you can set up a reading culture in your home. I keep using that word over and over and over again. And it can be anything. It can be graphic novels or cookbooks or newspapers or whatever you like to read. You don't have to be a pro to read. You don't have to be trained. Even if you're a bad reader, it doesn't matter. You can just sit with a book, sit with your kid, and they're great conversation starters. And I just think that it's going to be an opportunity for families to partner with teachers, particularly around books and reading. And if you can read, your world is open. And so I think that home connection is very important in that way. But at the same time, do it in a fun, engaging way.
I love that. I think it's such a critical component to just focus on what we can control. And, with so much uncertainty, I think being worried all the time isn't going to really do much for us. But what we can control is opening a book, right? Is having that conversation with our kid in our home. Lisa, as an educator, as overseeing a school, do you have any additional kind of thoughts on your vision for the summer and fall? And also, if we are continuing to be online, how to really help parents, especially working parents, kind of keep that structure and manage through that in the weeks and months to come?
Yeah, well, like Judy said, there's so many options out there, lots unknown. I think number one, the online system is going to have to stay in place no matter what, because even if we go back, there are going to be teachers and students that cannot come back for whatever health reason. So we have to leave that open. And even if, there's a second wave or another pandemic, unfortunately down the road, we have to just be prepared. We weren't prepared this time, right? We transformed everything in 5 days. And unfortunately, we tried our best, but this isn't true virtual education. So I think we need to keep that in place. And then remember that regardless of what our districts decide. The whole point is we just need less kids in each room. So whether it be half online, half home, half Monday, Tuesday, half, Thursday, Friday, the whole point is less kids, farther apart, lots of those social distancing guidelines we can take in place. So we have to be open to it. Everyone has their opinion, but we're trying our best because we want to keep your kids and teachers safe. And, as far as if this continues or if you've got to work from home with your student, even over the summer, we've kind of been in summer weirdly, we've been working, but we're home. So it's odd. I always say to everyone, my number one tip is come up with a schedule or a routine of some sort, because I remind every parent, when your kid was in school, they had a schedule. They knew all day long. You can ask them today, when you get off watching this, what time was your reading every day? And every kid will spit out the exact minutes because they were trained on it. And it's a feeling of like knowing what's coming next, and it calms everything. There's no wondering what's going on. So, I built mine with my kids. I had them a part of it. And we not only built out the school day, but also with the afternoons, because goodness, after school, they have like 9 hours. So we put in, playtime outside, chore time, video game time, Zoom call with friends, and it's changed. I'm not going to lie. It's not perfect, but you got to be flexible. But I think it's important to establish that system. And that way, especially as they get a little older, and I'm not talking just your high school, even third, fourth, fifth, they can kind of be trained on their own throughout that schedule during the day and make life easier for you when you're working from home. So that's just my tip that I always share.
No, I think that's a great tip. And I know there was all those memes kind of flying around Instagram of like the perfect schedule that then morphed into just let's all drink all day, right? Like it really got kind of crazy there. But I do think kind of resetting, one of the things that we've been working on lately is that we went into this in this mentality that it was only going to be, maybe a few weeks, maybe a couple months. And so it was just this power through mentality. I think we have this opportunity now as we're going into summer and school loads are lightening a bit to just step back and kind of reset those expectations and reset your day, reset that schedule, and have that opportunity to have a conversation with everyone in your family about how it's going to look. And, one thing that we're doing too is we have just daily like stand-up meetings where, we kind of get as a family and say, all right, I have a two and a half and a almost 5-year-old, and they both have online learning. So it's like, all right, Abby, you have this call with teacher Martha, and Caitlin, you've got this call with teacher Angie, and just so that they know what to expect throughout the day too. So I think especially if your days are, not as rigid with your work, to be able to just kind of keep everybody in light of what's going to happen throughout the day is a great tip as well.
The only thing I would jump in and add to that just quickly is that to add on what you're saying is to add on a good night bedtime routine with books, because that can sort of cap the day off as well, and it's with a reliable story at the end of the day.
Oh, I love that. And what a great way to end your evening as well. So wonderful. So Priya, more in the childcare realm where your expertise is. So one of the things that we've been hearing is that childcare has already been a crisis in this country. And in the expectation of things kind of reopening, we actually expect about 20% less daycare spots to be available. So just from what you're hearing, what are maybe some options that parents should be considering? What are daycares doing to kind of prepare to open, or what should parents be even asking to make sure that they feel safe and ready to send their kids back to a daycare setting?
Yeah, Mary Beth, this is, something that is really important to me, both from a professional perspective, but also from a personal standpoint. I have 2 young kids. We're going into summer. We're thinking about things like summer camps. And as a parent, I have those questions of, what should I be asking? But, to your point, I've actually read different stats from the perspective of the number of childcare and daycare facilities that will remain closed. And depending on what part of the country you're in, it's almost as high as 40%. So there's going to be even larger childcare deserts than there were before. And childcare has been a crisis for years. Even just last year, I think the actual dollar amount that U.S. companies lost in productivity because of childcare breakdowns was close to $60 billion. That number is just getting exacerbated now because organizations are losing even more productivity because parents, like we've been talking about, just aren't able to do the work that needs to get done. So thinking about some alternatives, because that's ultimately what we have to do, is kind of going back to what Lisa and Judy both were talking about too, which is how do you try and integrate online opportunities with sort of traditional opportunities too? I do know that there are parents that are looking to, you know, reach out to their teachers or reach out to tutors or to nannies on an individual basis to help kind of bring that structure and bring sort of that face-to-face curriculum back to their children. I think that's an absolutely lovely option. But online, I think, is going to be something that is here to stay. I think organizations will likely also see online, quote unquote, childcare as an option. But on-site childcare and physical childcare still is a necessity. There are so many organizations or so many companies that have to have their essential staff in the office or on site. I mean, the healthcare space, you know, is number one, right? And so, as a company ourselves, we are very closely following CDC guidelines, which change almost on a weekly basis in terms of what PPE do caregivers need, what are the cleaning rules, what are the rules in terms of touching surfaces and going to the bathroom, washing hands. Those are the types of things that we're trying to stay above as well as we start returning to providing our pop-up childcare service. I will say this is hot off the presses. I just literally saw this come in through email. We're in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Our county will be moving to green most probably next week, which is honestly a little bit scary for me, but it's understandable as the rest of the country is opening up. And so what we're doing again is trying to stay right on top of those guidelines, trying to educate and empower our customers as well as their key stakeholders to know what it is you should be asking. Bring, you know, whatever masks or other PPE you want yourself or your child to use too. And we're just going to keep doing that to try to make sure that we're not only providing access as much as we can, but trying to do it as safely as possible.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's exactly where we have to rely on that parent ability to be flexible, because those guidelines are changing so quickly. And, you know, what might be in place today might change in a few weeks or a few months. And I think we're also going to be in this position where there might be some starts and stops too, right? So keeping that online learning open where we may be able to go back to school for a period of time, and then that might be restricted again, or, you know, just depending on flare-ups and other situations. But one thing too, Priya, that I wanted you to touch on, you know, I think we've gotten a little bit familiar with online learning in the past few weeks and months, but talk to us a little bit about online care. So what does that look like? What is Flexible offering? But what should parents be looking for, and if they can actually utilize some online care? Because it's nothing I've ever even personally considered.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, you know, pre-COVID, there were definitely organizations that were looking at virtual education, so ed tech, if you will. And post-COVID, or in the realm that we're in now, there's a lot more options. Now, these range from things like more educational based to more engagement based. What Flexible has done is we've launched virtual mini camps, and actually there's one happening right now during this session. So there's kids that are able to engage with our facilitators. But these are sessions for children ages 3 to 10 that are able to connect and interact with a vetted, background checked facilitator on the other end. Now, again, this is not childcare. You know, a parent can't say, okay, cool, you're online, I'm going to go to grocery shopping. That's absolutely not the case. But what it is an opportunity for a parent to focus at work while their child is on a device in another room. And what we're doing is we're trying to make the experience better for the child. So, you know, for myself, honestly, my kids are on Zoom calls almost every day of the week. And they're starting to get Zoom fatigue, but the main reason is because the teacher or the facilitator, gets online and then immediately mutes all the children. And then it's just a one-way conversation. We're changing that in that none of the children are muted. These are group sessions that are only about 5 to 6 kids, and they're able to interact, so they're able to stay online. And so what we see is parents are able to get their job done, and kids are having the interaction and the validation that they're looking for from an adult.
Awesome. I love that. And I definitely think it's a tool that all working parents can use, but, you know, especially those that may not have a partner or a care provider to hand off to, right, that they could at least have maybe some uninterrupted time for a few minutes. So I did want to open that up to the group just in general, which is, is there any things that you can recommend particularly towards single parents of how they're managing their schedules and juggling, work and education? Anyone? I'll open it to whoever wants to jump in. Judy.
Yeah, I would just say that for all families, single parents, grandparents, whoever's helping raise kids, that again, my medium is books, and so books can be really a powerful tool to have discussions. There's a lot of fear and anxiety in kids and all kinds of adults, obviously. And there's a book I've been preaching all over called Ruby Finds a Worry by Tom Percival. It's a picture book, but it's a great catalyst for discussion because sometimes people are uncomfortable having conversations about hard things, or they can't even find their way to figure out when to talk about it. So a book can make a kid feel super successful reading it. And also in this little story where the girl has a big worry and it's growing until she meets another little kid, and she talks about it, and in talking about it, it diffuses some of the anxiety. It's not a panacea, but it can really help, single parents, families, everybody really keep that conversation open and friendly and successful and productive. Our colleagues are going to post some suggestions for books we've picked. If anybody's interested, also, please feel free to call us.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we'd love to get those suggestions on great books. You can always add to your home library for sure. Yeah. In terms of setting routines, I know we talked about kind of having that schedule, kind of incorporating that schedule, but any tips from any of you on how you've actually been able to kind of keep those routines to make sure that you're actually utilizing instead of, making the really lovely color-coded schedule, putting it on the wall, and then forgetting that it's even there?
If I can just jump in there, I think one of the things that's helped us personally is we actually have a giant whiteboard in our house. And what we do is we, just like you said, Mary Beth, we have not really a standing meeting every day, but we do have kind of a family get together and say, okay, Monday through Friday, what are the things that are happening? And we do try and color code. My fourth grader has his, call with his teacher on Tuesdays and Thursdays. My 6-year-old has his call with his kindergarten on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And we go through it, and that structure, I think Lisa had said, which makes so much sense. It provides boundaries, but then it provides comfort too. And I can tell when we go through the week and we plan, I can tell my kids feel good. Now, I'm personally also just learning so much from this panel too about what to do going into summer. So my head is also thinking, how can we continue leveraging the schedules that we've created this whole time and use that whiteboard and keep making more schedules around books and around outdoor time. But that's at least what we use in our house.
Yeah, and if I can just jump in real quick, just going off what she said, the most important thing is to post it. Like, we make schedules, but a lot of people forget to post it. Like, it's important. Your kids are used to in school looking up and seeing a schedule. Post it, refer to it. When they're off, bring them back to it, remind them there it is, so that they know that's the place they go to stay on track.
I love that. I think it's so important to have it kind of in that central point. One kind of final thing as we're thinking about this, especially, Lisa, I'll ask you to start, especially as someone who's running a school. What are some of the impacts that you see to kids, in terms of milestones developmentally? Is there anything that parents should be particularly conscious of and in terms of keeping kids on track, so to speak?
Yeah, I think, of course, education is important, but we need to remember their mental health. And I keep reminding everyone of that, because kids will never say to you, I don't like this, it doesn't feel right. They just act it out in different ways. And so we have to remember that, to ask them and talk to them about it, especially our little kids, they won't say anything. And so we have to remember first their mental health, check in, try to keep as much interaction, even if it's through Zoom. I know Priya was saying about how in the class, a lot of it's on mute. Get them on. I've set up with my kids' friends. I talk to other moms, we get 3 or 4 on a group and just let them talk. And at first they sat there like, this is weird. And I'm like, no, you need this social interaction. And then just moving into the summer, I know we lost some time. But, you know, going off of like what Judy keeps saying, we don't need to have worksheets and assignments. You can just read, you can just write in a journal, you can go outside and pick up stuff for science. So it's important to continue the learning, but to kind of go away from those rigid assignments, because they're over it right now. They want summer. So we need to give them some type of fun learning.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely. I think we can all start with the book that Judy suggested about the worry, to be able to facilitate those mental health conversations with our kids. But Judy, go ahead. I think you were going to add something.
Yeah, I think a lot of school, you know, we see teachers try to have classes and the kids just want to see their friends. You know, they want to be together. They want to feel, and so much of going to school is like you're successful at something. You're getting validated. So I think you can, it doesn't matter what it is. You know, it can be bringing the water pitcher to the table, whatever, but to make kids feel positive, to feel successful. You know, I'll drone on and on about how books can do that, but I think it's really important, whatever it is, just to keep their emotional and psychological well-being in mind, more than academics right now. I totally agree with what you're saying. Don't worry about your 5-year-old. She'll be fine in kindergarten.
Thank you. No, that is important. One final question for the group is just on, do you have any insight or thoughts on how you think employers should be supporting education right now and supporting working parents with childcare? Because we know that, you know, up to 30% of women are considering quitting their jobs due to the fact that they don't have support in the home. So just any thoughts on that?
So if I could start on that. So interestingly, up until COVID, Mary Beth, I think childcare and the way that employers supported parents from a childcare perspective primarily focused on the early childhood phase, which was 5 and under. Mm-hmm. And now this is the first time probably since World War II where schools are finally seen as a part of the spectrum of childcare. And the fact that children ages 6 to 12 cannot stay home by themselves. Schools played an incredibly important role from a childcare standpoint. And so employers are finally seeing that childcare is a much larger spectrum. There are 56 million school-age children that are not in school right now. And so how employers can support their employees. There's lots of tech companies that are starting to do this, lots of other organizations that are looking at workplace benefits and the entire benefits package and trying to understand how to fit some more flexible solutions into that, whether that be offering more time off or offering a longer maternity or paternity leave, offering solutions like we offer, whether they be on-site or online, or offering access to some of the childcare aggregator websites that allow for a parent to connect directly with a nanny. But I think organizations are going to keep looking for ways to support working parents, because now that everybody's home, everybody sees it. And it just continues to remind me of the BBC interview where the man is doing the interview and his child amazingly walks in. That is everybody's day, every day now. And so employers are in it and they understand just how important that is. And it's exciting to see, but it's just so important to do something about it now.
Yeah, definitely agree. And that actually happened to me just an hour ago. I was presenting to a client and my daughter walked in to tell me about how her Moana had lost her shoes and it was a whole big debacle. So, you know, definitely agree. I think one of the best things about, or one of the, maybe not best things, but one of the silver linings that we can see out of this situation is just that ability to recognize that caregiving is such a critical component to our economy and to supporting working parents. And you know, we're all being forced to parent out loud with our kids in the background. And so I think where we can continue to have those conversations. So I just want to thank all of you for participating today. This was a great conversation. Judy provided that book list, so that is in the chat function for all of you to access, and we'll make sure that that is widely spread, because I think that's a great place for us to start and to really think about just reflecting, taking a deep breath. It's going to be okay. We can read to our kids, make sure we've got our schedules posted in our kitchens and in a predominant way, and you know, and look at alternatives for caregiving. So thank you all to the panel. We really appreciate it. Thank you to Mother Honestly.